Yes, ma'am. The slides are visible.
Yeah. Hi. Good evening, everyone. Okay. Before we get into today's session, I want to make sure we all are on the same page with three core concepts we have been using across our training and that underpin everything we do in evidence generation. Okay, just I want to give a brief on the three concepts. Okay, first one is real world evidence. Okay, this is the data we collect from the real, if all knows, just it is a refreshing for you, just hear this. Okay, from the real everyday settings where healthcare actually happens, not from the tightly controlled environment of the clinical, right? It comes from sources like EHRs, insurance claim data, patient registries, and even data from wearable diseases, wearable uh, devices. And so, because real world patients are rarely like trial participants, they have other health conditions, take multiple medications, and face barriers like affordability or accessibility. So, RWE means real world evidence lets us see how the treatment perform under these real conditions, capturing outcomes like long-term effectiveness, like adherence patterns and safety signals that may not appear in actual clinical trials. For example, if you see example, a blood pressure drug might lower blood pressure well in trials, right? But in real life, patients may miss doses or combine it with other medications, changing the results. So that is about order. When it comes to second concept, that is HEOR, that is health economics and outcome research. So HEOR is all about measuring the value of healthcare interventions. We don't just ask how it works. We ask, is it worth it? So it includes economic evaluations like cost effectiveness analysis and budget impact models, as well as clinical and patient reported outcomes too. Okay, this gives decision makers like payers, policy makers, and hospital administrators the evidence they need to decide whether a treatment should be funded or reimbursed. Okay, for example, a cancer therapy may extend survival by 6 months. But if it costs $200,000 per patient, HOR can help determine if that investment delivers value compared to alternatives. So here comes the HOR concept. Okay, now we saw RWA, we saw HOR. Now the third concept is systemic reviews. So these are, most of you know about this, yes? These are structure, methodological summaries of all high quality evidence available on a particular question. So the process is transparent and reproducible. We define the research question, search multiple databases, apply inclusion exclusion criteria, extract data, and access study quality. So the goal is to minimize bias so that our conclusions are trustworthy. So this brings together all the high quality evidence on a topic. So in a transparent and reproducible way. So the decision makers can rely on the findings. So for example, if multiple studies have tested a new diabetes drug, a systemic review pulls them together to give a single comprehensive picture of its efficacy and safety rather than rely on just one study finding. So all together, that is RWE, HEOR, and systematic reviews form the foundation of evidence generation. Okay, they ensure that the data we produce is robust, relevant, and actionable, not just for regulators but also for all stakeholders. Okay, and that brings us directly to today's session, or these are the foundation of evidence generation. Okay, where we will explore how these principles come together in evidence generation and clinical trial support. So, with that refresher in mind, let's move into our today's session 6. Okay, that is evidence generation and clinical trial support. Okay, uh, now, I am welcoming everyone to session 6, evidence generation and clinical trial support. And today's session is about how we plan, generate, and use evidence. Not just to get a green light for regulators, from regulators, but to continuously support informed decision making for everyone involved in healthcare. Okay, when we think of evidence generation, many people immediately picture clinical trials for regulatory approval. But approval is really just a first milestone. After a therapy is launched, new questions arises from different audiences like clinicians, payers, patients, and regulators. So, what are the questions? Like first, if you see clinicians, they want to know how does this work in my patient population? For example, will the treatment be just as effective for elderly patients with multiple comorbidities as it was in the trial? Next, if it comes to payers, they'll ask, is this treatment worth finding then compared to other options? So, they look at cost effectiveness, budget impact, what we have seen in HUO, right? So, budget impact and whether the benefits justify the expenses. Okay, if it is effective, it is justifying the expenses, then other drug. So, like that, the payer will see. And if it comes to patients, he'll care about what it means for their lives, right? Will it improve their quality of life? Will it be affordable and accessible? How easy will it be to use? Like that, the patient will see. And if it comes to a regulator, they continue to monitor safety and performance. So asking, are there any long-term risk we didn't see in the trials? So are the benefits still overweighting the risk? So like this, so many questions arise. Okay, so evidence generation does not start at approval. It evolves into an ongoing process of collecting real world data, running additional studies, and tailoring insights for each of these audiences. So, our job is to plan this strategically. Okay, identifying evidence gaps early, deciding what data to collect, and aligning our approach so the same evidence can serve multiple stakeholders. Okay, this is what transforms a single moment of approval into a long-term success story for the therapy and the most importantly for the patients who rely on it. For example, think of a drug launch like for example, if you take drug launch like a movie premiere. So, approval is the red carpet moment. But what happens after? Reviews, audience feedback, box office numbers, all this shapes the movie success, right? Similarly, evidence generations continues after approval to shape a therapy success. So similarly in sports, qualifying for a Olympics is just one step. The real work is winning medals and maintaining peak performance. So, if you come to our health examples, a diabetes drug approved based on strong trial results showed different adherence patterns in real life. By tracking pharmacy refill data and wearable glucose monitoring readings, researchers found many patients skipped doses when they felt well. When they felt well because they are feeling well and they will skip the doses. So this led to targeted patient education programs that improved adherence and long-term outcomes. And one more example, if you see in the medicine, a new immunotherapy received approval for a specific cancer type. But real-world registry data later revealed that certain patient subgroups, those with autoimmune conditions, were experiencing higher adverse events. So this information helped clinicians adjust treatment protocols and informed regulators safety recommendations. So these examples show why our role is to plan strategically, spotting evidence gaps early, deciding what to collect and aligning so the same evidence can meet the needs of clinicians, payers, patients and regulators. So this turn a single moment of approval into a sustained success for the therapy and most importantly for the patients who rely on it. So let's start by looking or exploring at the two main pillars of evidence of medical evidence. So that is clinical trials and RWD. So we have clinical trials that is which are often called as gold standard of evidence. So they are carefully designed experiments conducted under ideal, highly controlled conditions, right? And participants are carefully selected, often younger, healthier, and with fewer complicating conditions than a general population to reduce the variability, right? This often researched to isolate the effect of the treatment and determine if it is both safe and effective in those specific circumstances. So, trials use strict inclusion and exclusion criteria to ensure a clean, comparable population. So every step is standardized here, from dosing schedule to monitoring to eliminate confounding factors. So the goal is to prove causation. Does the treatment cause the desired outcome under the best possible conditions? Like that, it is a goal. So for example, a new asthma inhaler may be tested in in patients with moderate asthma, okay, who do not smoke, because in specific conditions we are doing the trial, who do not smoke and have no other respiratory illnesses, to clearly measure its impact without interference from other factors. So another example is a cholesterol lowering drug might only be tested in patients with specific cholesterol ranges and no heart diseases to precisely measure its biochemical effect. This is about the trial with specific conditions. But then we have RWE, that is real world evidence, which gives us a very different picture because RWE reflects the messiness of real life healthcare, right? There is no specific conditions. It includes patients of different ages, ethnicities, comorbidities, and lifestyles. It is derived from sources like EHR, insurance claims, disease registries, and even wearable health devices. So, unlike trials, RWE is not about creating perfect conditions. It's about seeing how the treatment works when life is not perfect, right? So here, patients may forget doses or take medications at irregular times. That is called a like adherence issues, and they may be on multiple other conditions leading to drug-drug interactions. They might have additional chronic illnesses like comorbidities that affect outcomes. So, for example, in real life, there we have seen asthma patients in specific conditions, right? In real life, that same asthma inhaler might be used by patient who also smoke, have COPD, or live in areas with high air pollution. Right, different. It is about the real life we are talking. It is not in the specific conditions. So those are the factors that can change its effectiveness. And example two, the cholesterol lowering drug might be used by patients who skip doses, have kidney diseases, or take other medications that affect metabolism. So things not seen in the control trial group, we are seeing here. So in short, if you tell, clinical trials tells us if a treatment can work under the best possible conditions, while RW tells us how it does work when real patients with all the differences and challenges are using it in everyday life. Okay, but if trials, if trials gives us such robust data or strong proof, why do we still need more evidence? Let's find out. Okay, here comes why evidence generation matters beyond approval. Okay, here, regulatory trials are designed to answer one core question. Can it work under ideal conditions? That is the question. They are tightly controlled experiments, carefully selected patients, strict adherence protocols, and close monitoring. And while that's exactly what regulators need to make an approval decision, okay, it doesn't answer every question that real world healthcare stakeholders like clinicians, payers, patients, and regulators have. So, here, clinicians want to know, will it work for my patient population with all their difference in age, health conditions, and lifestyle? And if it comes to payers, already seen, again I am revising, if it comes to payers, they want to know, will it deliver enough value to justify its cost compared to other available options? And next patients wants to know, will it fit into my daily life without causing major disruptions or side effects? And finally, regulators want to know, will it long-term safety and effectiveness hold up once it's in Byju's. So, like that questions. That's why non-registrational evidence becomes critical after approval. So, this is evidence that goes beyond what was needed for a initial regulatory submission and focuses on the real world use of the therapy. Okay, non-registrational evidence can tell us about comorbidities, adherence, quality of life, and healthcare utilization. What is comorbidities? How does treatment perform in patients who have other chronic diseases alongside the target conditions? And if it comes to adherence, are patients taking it as prescribed, or their patterns or misdoses, early discontinuation, or incorrect use, like that. And it comes to quality life. Does it meaningfully improve how patients feel and function in their daily lives, like that? And healthcare utilization, does it reduce hospital admissions, emergency visits, or the needs for additional treatment? For example, take a blood pressure drug. Okay, in trials, patients take every dose as instructed and have regular follow-ups. In the real world, some forget doses. Okay, and some could afford regular refills, and some have conditions like diabetes and um, like what that interact with the treatment, altering its impact. And if you take a cancer drug, trial patients are generally healthier from their cancer, but real world patients may have heart diseases, kidney problems, or other issues that make them more vulnerable to side effects, reducing overall benefit. If you take a vaccine example, trial participants are motivated and screened and closely tracked, right? In reality, uptake can be influenced by misinformation, like cultural beliefs, travel distance to clinics, and vaccine storage, right? These examples shows that without non-registrational evidence, we risk overestimating the benefits or underestimating the challenges of a therapy in actual practice. So, in short, regulatory trials tell us if it can work. Non-registrational evidence tells us how it does work once it's in a messy, complex real world. Both are so both are essential for truly understanding a therapist's value. So, how do we make sure? How do we make sure we collect the right evidence at the right time to answer all these real world questions? That's where strategic planning comes in. So, and that's our next focus. Okay, here, evidence generation is not an afterthought, it's something we plan years before we actually need the data. So, the MAPS 2025 framework recommends that we start planning at least 3 years before the evidence will be required. Why so early? Why so early? Because healthcare environments, regulations, and competitive landscapes evolve quickly. If you start late, we risk missing critical opportunities or producing evidence that's outdated or irrelevant by the time it's needed. So, planning ahead allows us, like, that is about looking into a future, like early planning, anticipating upcoming market launches, competitor activity, payer expectations, and regulatory trends. Okay, next, it gives us time to design robust studies, secure the right data sources, and ensure that when stakeholders ask questions, we already have the answers, right? So, for example, for a rare disease therapy, early planning ensures that post marketing studies, patient registries, and real world safety data are ready to share with payers and HTA bodies the moment the product launches. And the second one is aligning with the teams. What it means? It's evidence generation. It is not owned by one department. It's a cross-functional effort. Like R&D brings trials data, medical affairs focuses on clinical and scientific communication, HUR brings value and cost effectiveness analysis, and market access issues reimbursement readiness, and commercial alliance messaging for market success. If these groups, if all these three, all group means R&D, medical affairs, HUR, market access, commercial alliance, if all these groups are talking to each other, then ensures they will we risk duplicated work if this means if they are not talking to each other, we risk duplicated work, inconsistent messaging, or missed opportunity. So aligning between the teams is very, very important. So for example, in the diabetes drug portfolio, early alignment lets teams coordinate trial endpoints, collect real-world adherence data, and generate cost-effectiveness evidence, ensuring the same datasets serve multiple purposes in multiple markets. So, next one is prioritizing the gaps. Not every evidence gap is equally important. Some will directly influence market access or prescribing decisions, while others have nice to have. But prioritization helps allocate resources where they'll have the most impact. For example, if an HTA body is particularly focused on quality of life outcomes, that becomes a high priority evidence gap to fill before launch. Okay. And next is adapting dynamically. So healthcare is fast moving. New competitors emerge, new guidelines are released, and payers policies change. So every planning is important, but flexibility is just as crucial. Okay, plans must evolve as new data, feedback, and environmental changes occurs. For example, midway through a cardiovascular drug study, a competitor releases breakthrough trial data. Okay, and adapting quickly could mean adding comparative analysis or revising health economic models to maintain competitive position. So, for your better understanding, I can tell if you take a GPS route analogy, this is like setting your GPS before a long road trip, right? So, you know the fastest route, avoid unnecessary detours, and reach your destination on time. Yeah, right. And I'll give one more example also. Like your analogy in a wedding. Okay. It's like organizing a wedding, if you see. You can't start a day before, right? You plan the guest list, book the venue, coordinate vendors, and adapt if something changes, like the weather, so on, right? So, why it matters? By starting, why this all this matters? Why I'm telling why we are very pre-planned for this. Because by starting 3 years in advance, we ensure that when the product is ready for the market, the evidence is also ready. Evidence that is not only high quality but also high relevant to every stakeholder. Without this foresight, we risk approval without adoption or launch without access. But even the best plan won't be effective unless we know who the evidence is for. Okay, different stakeholders, that is, providers, payers, patients, regulators have different needs. So, tailoring evidence to those needs is essential. Okay, if it comes to evidence generation, it's important to remember there's no such thing as one size fits all evidence. So, the same data set won't necessarily satisfy every stakeholder because each group has a different lens through which they evaluate a treatment. We must tailor evidence to our audience or different stakeholders. Okay, if it comes to healthcare providers, who are the healthcare providers? Like physicians, nurses, specialists, want evidence that helps them make the best clinical decisions for their patients. Their priority is to know, is it safe? Is it effective? Will it work for my specific patient population? They look for data on efficacy, safety, tolerability, and comparative effectiveness. So they value head-to-head trial data, subgroup analysis, and evidence on how well the treatment works in practice. So they may also want guideline alignment. Does the evidence match what's recommended by professional bodies? So, for example, for a cancer drug, if you see for a cancer drug, providers may focus on median survival improvement, tumor response rates, and safety profiles. So they want to know if the treatment will actually help their patient survive longer or have a better quality of life. But if it comes to payers, such as insurance companies, government health systems, health technology assessment means HTA bodies, looks at treatments through an economic and value lens, means cost. Okay, their key question is this worth the cost compared to alternatives? Okay, they want cost effectiveness analysis. So they want cost per query gained, budget impact models, and comparative value data. So the decision often determines reimbursement status, which can directly affect patient access. So, for example, for the same cancer drug, a payer might focus on whether the cost per additional year of life is justified compared to existing treatments. So, and whether the health system can afford to make it available broadly. So, that is about the payer's point of view. Then, if it comes to patients, they view treatments through a personal impact lens. So, they want to know, will this improve my quality of life? Will I be able to afford and access it? Is it convenient to use? Like that, they value patient-reported outcomes, data on side effects, treatment convenience, and real-world accessibilities. Okay. For chronic diseases, they may prioritize daily comfort, independence, and ability to work or maintain activity. So, for example, for the cancer drug, patient might focus on side effect severity. For example, hair loss, nausea, fatigue, right? Treatment frequency once a month versus daily, like that how they want to take, and whether it allows them to live more comfortably during treatment. So all these things will come into the patient view. And then if it comes to regulators such as FDA, EMA, or national drug agencies, focus on ensuring the ongoing safety, efficacy, and quality of treatment after it's approved. So their main focus is, does the benefit risk profile remain favorable over time? Okay, they want post marketing safety data, long term follow up studies, and compliance with commitments made drug approved. So, they may require updated labeling, risk management plans, or even withdrawal if new safety concerns arise. So, for example, for a cancer drug, regulators might track rare adverse events such as immune-related complications that only become apparent after years of use in thousands of patients. Okay, bringing it together with examples or a cancer patient. So I'm taking all the four and I'm telling for a cancer drug, providers might focus on survival rates, payers might focus on cost per value, and patient might focus on side effects and treatment convenience, and regulators might focus on rare adverse events. And if it comes to asthma inhaler, provides wants comparative lung function data, and again payers wants economic data. Patients wants portability and ease of use, and regulator wants safety over long terms. Okay, so if we present only one type of evidence, say clinical efficacy, we leave critical questions unanswered for other stakeholders. So tailoring evidence means identifying the most relevant data for each group. So, framing it in their language and delivering it in a format they trust. So, to address all these needs or to deliver this tailored evidence, we must leverage or need to tap into advanced technologies and diverse data sources that can capture the right information to the right audience at the right time. Okay, so as we know, today we have the ability to combine multiple data sources to get a much richer, more continuous picture of patient care. So we can integrate electronic health records, clients' data, patient registries, wearable devices. Like means what is the EHR capturing diagnosis, prescriptions, lab results, imaging, and clinical notes from everyone practice. So we'll find in EHR. If it comes to claims data, it shows healthcare utilization patterns such as hospital admissions, outpatient visits, and prescription refills. If it comes to patient registries, it organized collections of data for patients with specific conditions or undergoing specific treatments, often across multiple sites and over many years. So, and if it comes to wearable devices, providing it provides the continuous real-time health data such as activity levels and heart rate or glucose monitoring and sleep quality. So, what's powerful is that we are no longer limited to isolated data sets. We can now link these sources together and analyze them using advanced AI analytics platforms. So, like Verena Healthcare's Physician Engaged Group. That is one of the analytical platforms. So, this allows for prospective longitudinal real world evidence studies, meaning we can follow patients over time in real life, not just in short trial windows. So we can see the entire patient journey from diagnosis to treatment adjustment, side effects, and long term outcomes across different care settings. For example, if you see like this advanced technologies, instead of just having a single photo of a patient healthcare status, like we get it in a clinical trial endpoint, we now have a full HD video or continuous CCTV coverage of their entire treatment journey. We can watch how their health changes day by day, how they respond to interventions, and where challenges emerge. So from snapshot to full story, we can able to see. And if you go to other example, wearable devices can monitor heart rate variability in cardiac patients around the clock. These subtle changes might serve as early warning signs for worsening heart. So, signals that would likely be missed in the clinical trial with infrequent checks. So, like this variables detecting early signals here. So if we come to other example, insurance claims data can uncover trends in healthcare use, like a spike in emergency room visits or asthma patients after starting a new inhaler. So that might point to issues with inhaler so drug tolerance and accessibility. So insights that can directly inform clinical education and product improvements. That is, clients data revealing using patterns. So why all this matters? By integrating all these sources and analyzing them in real time, we can detect safety issues earlier, understand real world treatment effectiveness, identify patient subgroups who benefit most or least from the therapy, support regulatory payer and clinical decision making with robust evidence that mirrors actual reality. Okay, now that we understand the power of integrating device real world data sources, let's see how this approach works in practice. Through a diabetes case study, where real world evidence made the tangible difference in patient care. Okay, here we are seeing a case study. So, um, in this real world case, we looked at what happened often um, after a sulfonylureas administration. So, a sulfonylureas, which is a common class of drugs for type 2 diabetes, right, were approved and widely prescribed in the patients. So, clinical trials had already proven their efficacy under ideal conditions. But once the drug was being used in everyday practice, post approval studies began to paint a different picture. Many patients were not taking their medication as prescribed. So, we found patterns of poor adherence, meaning patients were missing doses, stopping early, or taking medication inconsistently. And here's the key, this problem was largely invisible in clinical trials because those patients have high monitoring, frequent follow-up, and motivated participants. So, what did we do? We collected real world data. Okay, real world dosing data. So from pharmacy refill records, patient self-reports, and even glucose monitoring devices to understand the actual patterns of use. So once we had this insight, we shared the findings with healthcare providers. Clinicians could then tailor their counseling, helping patients understand why consistent dosing matters, addressing their specific barriers, and offering practical strategies for improvement. So, the result improved adherence and over time, better patient outcomes, including more stable blood sugar control and fewer diabetes complications. So, we will see some more examples to reinforce the same concept. So, a patient might skip doses because of mild side effects like stomach upset or simply because of busy schedule. Without real world adherence data, we would not even know this was happening and we could not target the problem. And other example is real world studies might show that patients stop taking blood pressure medications uh, due to dizziness or fatigue. Okay, side effects, these are the side effects. They don't always mention in short clinical visits. So sharing that pattern with clinicians could lead to switching to better tolerated drugs or providing patient education on managing side effects. And we'll see one more example, like adherence data might reveal that some patients only take statins when they feel symptoms like chest discomfort, when in fact the drug is prevention. That insight drives the need for education campaigns that stress why statins must be taken consistently to be effective. So, here, if you see the core story arc here, the problem is patients not taking medicines as prescribed. Action is collect real world data to uncover the reasons. Then equip clinicians with this information. And what is the result? Better patient counseling, improved adherence, and ultimately better health outcomes. Okay, so this I am telling why all this. This case highlights the power of real world evidence. It's not just about identifying problems, it's about providing actionable insights that directly change how care is delivered without this feedback loop from real world use. Back to clinical gaps. Important gaps in care might remain hidden. Okay, now collecting this kind of data and aligning multiple stakeholders to act on it can be complex. So, to coordinate such projects efficiently or to make these efforts efficient, we use integrated evidence plans. So, let's explore how they work. So, here, an integrated evidence plan or IEP, okay, is essentially our master blueprint for evidence generation. It gives us a complete picture of what evidence is needed, not just in one country or for one stakeholder, but across multiple geographies and throughout the product's life cycle. Okay, without an IEP, different teams might end up working in silos, each running their own studies, collecting their own data, sometimes duplicating effort without realizing it. So this what happened? This waste resources create inconsistencies and slows down how quickly evidence can be delivered. So within IEP means integrated evidence plan, everything is aligned from the start. We have a single unified roadmap that gives a first one is holistic view of all evidence needs. What it means? It means instead of looking at evidence generation in fragments, regulatory here, payer there, patient advocacy elsewhere, and EAP or IEP maps out all requirements in one place. So, this ensures that everyone knows what's being collected, why it's being collected, and how it will be used. So, next is prevents duplication of effort. So when teams work separately, they often repeat the same type of data collection, right? But an IEP identifies the overlaps and ensures that one data can serve multiple purposes. This saves time, reduces cost, and increases efficiency. Okay, next is speeds adoption of therapies. What it means? It is by anticipating and delivering the evidence stakeholders need before they even ask for it. Then IUP accelerates decision making. So that means faster access for patients and quicker uptake in the market. Next is provides actionable insights. What it means? It is an IEP, means integrated evidence plan, isn't just a list of studies. It's designed to generate meaningful insights that inform clinical practice, policy decisions, and patient support programs. So, for example, to bring into life, like multiple time teams, one data set. Okay, instead of each team running separate studies, one for payers, one for providers, like that. In integrated evidence plan, IEP aligns them to the same data set is used for both. For example, trial safety and efficacy data could be analyzed for regulatory submissions and also modeled for cost effectiveness for payers. And another example is if you take an oncology case, okay, one oncology integrated evidence plan coordinated survival data collection for regulators, cost effectiveness modeling for payers, and quality of life surveys for patients. So, all using the same trial population. This might no duplicated work and consistent messaging across stakeholders. So, another example in vaccines, a single IEP can align safety monitoring, vaccination coverage surveys, and economic impact model. So, across multiple countries, uh, all this means vaccination coverage surveys, economic impact modeling, so across multiple countries, so that all evidence requirements are met with coordinated studies rather than fragmented ones, right? So why this all matters? Again, integrated evidence plans are about strategic efficiency. They ensure that resources, time, money, and people, and they are focused where they deliver the most impact, and that the evidence package is ready for every stakeholder without last minute scrambling. Okay, and next, this brings us to the future. Okay, integrated, adaptive, and patient-centered trial support. This integrated approach, where evidence is coordinated and stakeholder needs and anticipated, is shaping the next generation of how we plan and execute clinical and real-world studies. Okay, and here comes the future of clinical trials. Okay, the way we approach evidence generation is evolving. The future isn't about choosing between clinical trials and real world data. We should not take it separately. It's about combining them to create a more complete, more actionable picture and how treatments work. So, in this future, so by combining the trials and RWE, it maximizes the value. See, clinical trials gives us scientific rigor, right? Controlled conditions, clear cause and effect relationships, real world evidence gives us context. And if it comes to real world evidence, it gives us context how therapies perform in diverse patient population over the long term in everyday practice. So, by integrating the two, we maximize value. We confirm that treatments are both effective and practically useful. We can identify which patient group benefit most and in which circumstances. So, again, example I'm telling, a cancer drug might show strong trial results, but when combined with RWE, we discover that younger patients tolerate it better, while older patients need modified dosing, helping clinicians tailor care more effectively. Then, if it comes to when we combine these both, we can accelerate innovation with a strategic stakeholder focused plan. So, when we know exactly what payers, providers, patients, and regulators need, we can design evidence programs that meet those needs from the start, avoiding delays in access or adoption. Okay, for example, AI-driven adaptive trials can adjust recruitment mid-study to focus on patient subgroups showing the most benefit, making studies faster, cheaper, and reliable. This directly serves both clinical and payer decision making needs. So, and one more thing, it also leads transformation by making medical affairs a central drive. So, what medical affairs is uniquely positioned to connect the dots between science, market needs, and patient care. In the future, they won't just be a support function, they'll be the strategic engine driving better health outcomes. So, for example, global patient registries can feed real time safety and effectiveness data to regulators. So, if safety concerns arise, treatment guidelines can be updated quickly, reducing harm and improving patient care. So, let's walk through. I want to show one more thing for you. So, if you see this, I hope all can able to see the Excel, right? Please, anyone can answer.
Yes, it's visible, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. So, let's walk through the also it's here what yeah, here we will see the integrated evidence plan. I have taken a hypothetical uh, like a diabetes therapy. Okay, here this walkthrough shows how each evidence type supports different needs, how they uh, fit together over time, and how they help us maximize the impact of our diabetes therapy. Here we are taking diabetes, right? So here what happened, if you take overall survival analysis, here the primary stakeholders are regulators and providers. So, and the timeline is -3 years means before starting. So before pre-planned 3 years and 2 + 2 years. So and data sources phase 3 trial and also RW registry follow. And here the key metric is median survival gain 6 months. And the intended use is support regulatory submissions and clinical guideline inclusions. Okay. So here, think of this as a cornerstone evidence. Okay, regulators want to see hard proof that the drug actually extends life under controlled conditions, while providers wants to know if those benefits are meaningful for their patients. So, we gather survival data first from the phase 3 trial, then follows patients in real world registries to confirm the effect holds true outside a trial setting. Okay, that 6-month median survival gain isn't just a number. It's the difference between regulatory approval and rejection, and it shapes treatment guidance for years to come. Okay, then comes to the second one, cost-effective models. Here, the primary stakeholders of payers, HTA bodies, and timeline is -2 years, means pre-planned 2 years, and the data source is trial outcomes and RW cost data, and the key metrics is incremental cost per value, that is $65,000, and intended uses demonstrate value to payers for reimbursement. So here what is happening? Here the following answers the questions. Is the therapy worth the money? That is the question. Here the answer gets for this question. So payers and SDA bodies needs to see not only that it works, but that it delivers value compared to alternatives. So we compare trial outcomes effectiveness with real world cost data to calculate cost per value. Okay, and here the $65,000 quality falls within acceptable thresholds in many markets. So this makes the reimbursement conversation much smoother. Okay, and if it comes to third one, it is a quality of life survey. So in quality of life survey, here the data source means the primary stakeholder is patients and advocacy groups, and the timeline is -2 years to 1 year, and the data source is patient report outcome from RWE, not the trials. Okay, and the key metric is average quality score 8.5 per 10. That is the quality score, and the intended uses highlight patient benefits to advocacy and access programs. So here clinical outcome matters, and also the patient's day-to-day experience, like an HbA1 reduction is great, but patients also care about energy levels, right? So convenience and side effects. So by capturing patient-reported outcomes from real-world users, we get a more human picture of the therapy's impact. So an average 8.5 per 10 QAL score is a powerful message for advocacy groups lobbying for broader access. Okay, and next is safety registry. So here the primary stakeholders are regulators, safety committees, and the timeline launch to +5 years, not it is post. So launch to 5 years, because it is safety registry, it is post marketing. Here the data source is long-term observational registry, and the key metric is severe hypoglycemic rate, it is 0.7%, and the intended use is fulfill post-marketing safety. What it is? So here we can see the approval is in the end. It's the beginning of continuous monitoring. A safety registry allows us to track rare or long-term side effects that might not appear in trials. So a severe hypoglycemic rate of just 0.7% tells regulators the therapy remains safe in the real world. So these findings are also critical for updating labels, educating physicians, and maintaining market confidence. Okay, and last one, adherence improvement study. Here the primary stakeholders provide as payers, and timeline is plus year 1 to 3 years, and data source is CHR data and wearable device tracking, and key metric is more than 90% in 42% of patients, and improve what it intended, it improve patient support and reduce drops. So here, if you talk here, we can see even the best drug fails if patients don't take it consistently, right? Using EHR data and wearable devices, we identify adherence patterns. who is sticking to the regimen and who isn't. So finding that 42% of the patient achieve more than 90% adherence helps us target interventions. So like reminder apps, counseling or cost support to boost those numbers and improve outcomes. So here the IAP shows that every data is intentionally planned ahead of time, targeted to a specific audience and designed to work together. So instead of isolated studies, we have one coordinated plan that support regulatory approval, payer negotiation, patient advocacy, safety monitoring, and clinical adoption. So let's wrap up with three key takeaways. First one, what we have seen, evidence generation doesn't stop at approval. It's a continuous process throughout the product life cycle. Next one is stakeholder need. It dictates the data we collect. So here it means knowing what each uh, group values ensures our evidence has maximized impact. And last one is integration and early planning maximize value. So aligning clinical ties, RW and stakeholder practice leads to faster, better adoption of therapies. So think of evidence generation like a relay race. Clinical trials start the race and real world evidence take the baton. Only by working together can they cross the finish line for patient benefit. Here we are closing this session. There is any queries or anything? I am stopping sharing the
Ma'am,
screen. Tell. Yes.
what role does post-marketing surveillance play a validating trial, finding or finding over long term?
Yeah. One.
1 second. Ma'am, I posted the question in chat. Can you please have a look?